Good evening. Hello. You'll hear just crickets and other bugs making noise. It's nighttime. I've had a very busy weekend thus far, grading papers, cleaning up the yard to the point of power washing, and now we're started painting the outdoor furniture again. We're big believers in reusing what you have. Speaking of, took our used couch that we had already being taken to the camp, and we got more used furniture from relatives. So there you go. It's better than what we had before, but we're both very practical. Very practical. I mean, we are not lavish in our spending, but anyway, I've been watching Hurricane Dorian, which is quite scary, and I did a video a couple of days ago, I guess Friday, saying for the Floridians to please get out because it's not worth it. I wouldn't bank on any sort of model as to where any hurricane is definitely going, ever. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. We can get a general idea sometimes, Texas as opposed to North Carolina, but when it gets, a little closer, they're not really sure. Hurricanes will take a turn in a different direction at the last minute all the time. That's happened in the past. Sometimes they'll just sit there. I'm not sure about how all this works and what we're capable of in changing things weather-wise and what we're not. But regardless of if it's natural, man-made, or natural and man-made, the fact is that there's something out there that's going to cause damage. Great damage. And that is the point. And I worry for those people over there, because I can identify with it, having lived down here a big portion of my life and along the Gulf. So I've just been thinking about, looking back at my life, and I was born in the beginning of the 70s, and I look back in my life and I think, how things have changed, as they say. And I've tried to look back to think where things were wrong, where they got right for a while in my world, and where it started going wrong again. I'm talking about my perception of what is going on in the world and in our country especially. And the 70s, I was young. It was the me generation. I was very young. But divorces started to become prevalent in the late 70s, which in turn would affect things down the line. You could see that ball start to get rolling, because once it starts, it usually has an effect generation after generation after generation in developing the character of the children, then the grandchildren, etc. So that just got started. But I remember the 80s as being pretty much a good decade as far as economics, except for the late 80s. You had a Black Monday. stock market went way down. But then, of course, things rebound. And if you're a long-term investor, no big deal. It'll come back. But overall, in the 80s, I just remember things being good and being around different people of different ethnic backgrounds, and things were starting to turn around, and race relations were seemed to be healing. And into the 90s, you even saw more interracial relationships, even in the South. And it was a gradual, I could see things just, nothing's perfect, but it just slowly moving on in a more inclusive and positive way. It's not overnight, but I could see it getting there. And then, you know, we had the Y2K into the 90s, and then, of course, 2001. Huge shift. Because Americans had been attacked on American soil for the first time since way back in the, Revolutionary War and French-American War, I believe, and then the one against Mexico, and way back, a couple of 100 years, and here we were. I mean, not as many died, but it's the first time. And then the suspicions about that being an inside job, whether it is or isn't, I'm not going to debate that right now. I have my definite ideas. But that shifts the mentality of a nation, period. And then the government coming in and taking some freedoms away to protect us, and then the development of Homeland Security, just another governmental body. And I don't know, God, in the last, I'd say through Clinton, we were good. Then Bush, we had 9/11. Country seemed to come together after that, but it's always short-lived because short memories. But and then you have new generations coming up who don't even remember it at all. And they have no connection to it whatsoever. And today, it's a mess. It's an absolute disaster. Just turn on the TV. But in the real world, not the television, in my group and those not too much younger, I mean, we're still the same people, but the children aren't. And they're being fed a whole bunch of BS, and I guess your lesser tolerable ones, people in the world, the ones who want to blame somebody for everything that goes wrong besides themselves, they feed into it too. And here we are. And because most of the world isn't on television. Most of the world is not being polled for these polls that they have on television, because I've never been called. Nobody's ever come to my door to ask my opinion, ever. And I mean, we're taking, Americans say, no, the majority of Americans don't say. And people are believing God, the news is so opinionated. I'm not saying the news was great back when, but the I and me and my and oh, it just didn't happen back then. You just didn't state your opinion. You just kind of reported on a story, and that was that. Not to say they didn't have their opinions, they just didn't have all these news stations 24 hours a day spewing whatever they think or whatever the owners think of that station or, and that the people who advertise for them agree with. But the majority of Americans are not being asked. We're being told a lot of things. We're being told, but we're not being asked. And I can't believe that I'm the only one who sees this besides, you know, the few people you find listening to their videos or whatever that are logical. But, and those are hard to find. But, it used to be 2 + 2 = 4, and there are certain things you can rely on in the world. If you throw the ball up, it's going to come down. If there are 2 X's, it's a female. And if it's an XY, it's a male. And that's just the way it is. But people are trying to take things that are just facts, provable. You can see it. There's physical evidence. You can see it for yourself. You don't need anybody to do some major experiment to prove it to you. And they're just taking that and twisting it and doing what they want to it and then trying to make us think the way that they do. And if we don't, oh, well, you're just awful. It's insane. To ask me to believe that you're something that you are physically not, and that if I don't believe the same, then I'm just ridiculous. And if I don't believe that children should be able to choose something different, then I'm just ridiculous. I mean, I was thinking earlier, is there one word I can use to describe that? And I came up with the word asinine. I think that's appropriate. It's totally asinine. I don't live in that kind of world. And for anybody to ask me to is just, you could call that, you need to go to the doctor and maybe stay there, to put it nicely. The sad part is there are people out there suffering, and the suicide rate is high because they're being cheerleaded on to behave like this. And in the end, it has consequences. And the suicide rate is high. But nobody wants to talk about that. No, we don't want to talk about that. What's being done to these children and these people is just horrendous. It's really unforgivable. It really is. And I mean, used to be you'd do some stupid stuff to fit in or draw attention to yourself, as a teenager or whatever, because, those awkward years. But now, there are adults participating in that. It's selfish. It's wrong. and they're hurting people. And that's my opinion. And I'm not the anchor of a news station, because if I was, you shouldn't be hearing my opinion. I'm just saying. But the world is quite upside down right now when it comes to the blah, blah, blah we hear. If you turn on that TV, which I really try not to do. Really. And you gotta watch what you're watching on these channels too. You have to watch it very closely. Take it, consider it, do some research on your own, check your gut, and, it's okay to say, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know is perfectly acceptable if you consider both ways. But if you do know something in your heart and with your mind and with your soul, then it's also okay to say, I believe that too. I mean, I'm talking about also morals and values. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And there are some things that are very clear. There aren't any gray areas there. It's very, very clear. Right, meaning it's evident. Wrong, meaning you're making up stuff to justify your position or justify your behavior. And you need to take a good look in the mirror, a really close look. Good look. And see what's really going on there, physically and mentally. Because I have a sneaking suspicion that if some people were to look in the mirror, and I mean really look at yourself, look into your eyes, the windows of your soul. I bet there are a lot of people out there who don't even know themselves. And I can say that because there was a point in my life where I was nearly lost. Nearly lost. And when you got right down to it, yeah, there were some evil influences around me. Some bad people. And I'm not talking about drugs, but I'm just talking about problems in life. There were some bad people around me, but, and how dare they act the way they act, but how dare I not think enough of myself sooner to say, you know what, enough's enough. I don't have to sit here and take this anymore. I don't have to sit here and listen to this anymore. I don't. And I said something to somebody one time, and I meant it. And you could say this to a lot of people and just stop the conversation because there's nothing really to talk about. And just ask them, or not ask them, tell them. If I were you, I'd be afraid to die. And that says a lot. That says a lot. One thing I know for sure, in my gut, in my heart, there are consequences. There are consequences on earth for your actions. For a lot of them. And for the rest, and also for those that do have consequences and those that somehow you slip on by, there's eventually you'll answer to it. if you don't get forgiveness and see the error of your ways and change. Because none of us are perfect, and we always have room for improvement. Some just have a lot more room for improvement than others. So, those are just my thoughts for today. I have more grading to do tomorrow. I'm finally into the computer system, so I gotta get things done. But I will keep up with y'all, and thank you for listening. And these are just my thoughts and my therapy. And have a great day tomorrow.